Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in another talk in the LATAM Digital Talent Summit. My name is Melissa. As you may know, I'm CMO of the Bridge, and I'm really happy to have the chance to share with you another talk. Today, we have a special guest, Jose Coronado, who is Executive Director, Head of Design Operations in JP Morgan with an amazing background in different fields like cloud, software as a service, enterprise applications, and a lot of things more. So, Jose, if you would like to share a bit about yourself, thank you again for joining us today, and we start when you're ready.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, everybody. I'm very excited to be here. In my current role, I'm basically building a design operations team for JP Morgan. However, our discussion today is going to be focused more on my broad level of experience, not just on my current experience with a financial services organization. Thank you for the invitation. Really excited to be here with you and with the audience. Should we go ahead and start?
Yes, let's go when you're ready.
Okay. Give me just 1 second.
Absolutely, don't worry.
The technical difficulties always happens. Okay, I think now we're ready.
We're ready. Please, everyone, if you have some questions, leave it on the chat. I will be collecting all of them to do a Q&A at the end of the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I want to start just with a little bit of a stage setting. If the pandemic has brought us anything positive, is the opportunity to speak to people who are heavily distributed around the world. In this particular case today, I'm very happy to speak to our peers and colleagues in the digital world in Latin America. So I'm going to start with a short story. And I want to qualify this as I'm 100% sure that this hasn't happened to you, especially, whether you're in the talent side looking for a job or you're in the hiring side and you're recruiting for people. But what happens in reality is that many companies really do not know what they're looking for, or many hiring managers actually do not know what they're looking for. This story is actually from a Colombian designer who a couple of years ago shared a story with me, and he's now practicing in design in Europe. But basically, he was reached out by a company, a potential hiring company, and they said, we're looking for a researcher, so why don't you talk to us? So he was ready, he prepared, he went talk to the hiring manager. And during the interview, he was getting hints that maybe what the hiring manager was looking for was more of a product designer rather than a researcher. As a follow-up, he actually, a few weeks later, reached out to the recruiter, and the recruiter and the hiring manager actually told him that, yes, they started looking for a researcher. Then they kind of adjust their search more for a product designer, and they end up hiring a visual designer because they wanted to concentrate on the visuals. The feedback from Lucas to the hiring manager was like, well, visuals for whom? How are the visuals contributing to the overall product strategy? And how are those visuals actually enhancing the output and the work product that the team is producing? The hiring manager actually didn't have any answer for these questions. Either didn't have it or didn't want to share it. But that situation, I'm pretty sure that, especially for our friends that are hosting this event, it has never happened where it is not really clear what is it we're looking for as a hiring company or as a hiring team. For the purpose of today, as I'm going to concentrate on the world of design and the world of digital, in our urgency to differentiate ourselves and make our positioning as professionals unique, we have created a whole different array of job titles and job disciplines. So information architecture, content strategy, design strategy, service design, visual design, product design. For the purposes of today's discussion, I want to frame these as design from a capital D perspective. So whether you're a researcher, you are a content strategist, or you are a design technologist, I want us to frame this conversation from the perspective of design as a capital D, and we are all designers in this discussion. Okay, so I want to take a look at quickly on the world around us. Gartner has done a lot of research with C-level executives, and what they have encountered in these discussions is actually the fact that organizations are investing to some extent in customer experience on our customer experience transformation program. And most of the executives that they interview and work with have mentioned that they predict that their brand will have to have a competitive advantage in the customer experience perspective. However, when you complement the Gartner research with what Forrester is doing in terms of that experience investment, yes, the answer is consistent. Executives see experience as a priority. However, when you look at what they're actually doing and investing in, is really in the low-hanging fruit, in the easy aspects of the experience. So they see an initial uptick in terms of their customer experience quality. However, as the year progresses and year 2 or year 3 of that investment comes to fruition, they see that their scores from a customer experience perspective go down, because they're really not empowering teams to do a deep investment in customer experience. They're also not giving them the resources or the tooling or the people that they need to really generate a deeper impact. Then we have the McKinsey work over the last 2 or 3 years in terms of the business value of design. When you look at the report they published, this is the longest and largest longitudinal study in terms of business metrics and decisions that companies have taken in different vertical markets about design. And what it is more interesting is basically the findings and the opportunities that they have encountered for people like us in the digital arena, and specifically in the design industry. What it is very clear, or what it is surprising about the McKinsey report, is the fact that more than 40% of the companies that they interviewed in this long-term study do not actually talk to customers. Imagine if you go through a multi-million-dollar investment of your product and you never actually validate whether what you're doing and the direction in which you're going and you're taking your organization is actually resonating or meets the customer needs before you launch. So that one is at the organization level. And then where we as designers designers practitioners and leaders have a big burden, and we have to take advantage of this opportunity, is that we don't actually measure the impact of the design work or any of the areas that we have in our practice. So, for example, we can say we have done research, but yeah, what is the actual impact of that research? So this is in terms of the stage setting. Now, the question that we have in front of us is really, how do we get from where we are right now to where we want to be or where we need to be? So let's take a look at the digital journey. And I hope that for the people in this forum, you encounter a few nuggets of information or ideas that you can apply either to your organization or to your own career. And depending on where you are, whether you are a brand new designer in a small startup, maybe you're the first designer that got hired, or you are a member of a small team, or you're a design leader who is building, expanding, and growing a design team in an organization, that you can leverage a few of the key aspects that I'm sharing with you today. This is not just my story, but these stories are actually a collection. They have been informed with multiple conversations that I have with design leaders around the world, whether it's in Asia Pacific, in Latin America, in North America, or in Europe. And I want to make sure that you take advantage of some of these stories and these lessons learned. Okay, so for the purpose of today, we're going to talk about 3 major areas that hopefully will help us get our business partners and our business organizations embrace and understand the importance of design. We're going to talk about design influence, strategy, and value. So starting with design influence, John Maeda and other people have been talking about the importance of developing strategic partnerships. John Maeda actually highlights the value of understanding and having the ability to develop partnerships as a key aspect of the work that we have to do. A few years ago, I was undertaking a new design system for an organization. And at the beginning, that project started as a closed-door project. Only a technology leader, a design leader, and a product management leader. And what we very quickly encountered is that, we could come up with the best ideas possible, either with a consulting firm that will help us create that design system, or with a small working group inside the organization. However, if we didn't open the doors and from the beginning and created the foundational relationships that we needed with those people, either at the leadership level that needed to have their teams drive the adoption of that design system, or at the ground level with the people who actually were going to be users and beneficiaries of that system, we would potentially have failed in our endeavor. The corollary of this story really is about the fact that we were able to create a managed open source a working group to develop this design system. And at the end of year one, we actually have penetrated about 80% of the target groups that we have set ourselves to do from that particular organization. And we were able to demonstrate the impact of that initial investment in the design system. But we would have not been able to do that unless we were intentional about developing the relationships and partnerships at the different levels of the organization to enable us to do that. Another aspect that I think is super critical is that if we are in a position of leadership, we have to bring our team and people in our team along for the ride. In an interview that I had with a design leader in Australia, she actually mentioned she was part of the design leadership team, but her boss, the managing director, was actually part of the C-suite in that particular organization. And what this design leader, global design leader, did was actually bring people from her leadership team and her management team to the C-suite discussions, either for them to present and have visibility and drive part of the agenda in those discussions, or actually to be there to learn not just about the design strategy, but actually how the business strategy overall informed the perspective that was required for the organization and to create some level of impact. So I think the bottom line here is that we have the responsibility to develop the talent in our team, but also to bring them along to for the ride, especially as we progress our career and different levels of leadership in the organizations. Another key aspect, I think it is fundamental, and I believe that inclusive design is good for business. But not only that, I think when we create or consider the wide range of dimensions of diversity, and we bring people with diverse backgrounds, with diverse education, with a diverse perspective into our teams, we are creating the conditions in our organization to generate more value and better solutions in the long term. We're also having to be really aware of what's happening in the world around us. Our organizations are not isolated to the issues of race, violence, or even unfortunate access to things like healthcare in a situation like a global pandemic like we are in. However, from an internal organization perspective, one of the aspects that we could embrace is, for example, how intentional are we about designing our recruiting, our hiring process? If we want to attract diverse talent, are the people that participate in the interviews, in the interviewing panel, as diverse and reflective of that target groups that we are going after? A few years ago, I actually had an opportunity to grow my the leadership team in my organization, and I was very intentional about hiring the right people, but also ensuring that as many diverse individuals and candidates applied for the role. And the research data that we have available to us actually indicates that if we have one diverse person in the candidate pool, that person has very little chance of getting hired. If we have at least two or more people in that talent pool, their chances of getting selected by the interviewing panel increase exponentially. And looking at the interviewer panel, if we want to recruit for diverse talent, but all we have is a whole bunch of white guys interviewing people in women candidates and minorities, then we have much less chance to have them be reflected or see themselves reflected in that organization. So we have to be very, very intentional about how we do that. Another aspect that I want to discuss is the fact that we need to engage and empower our team. And there's many different ways to do it. One story that comes from Andreas Hauser, who's the head of the App House Design Co-Innovation Design Center in SAP. He mentioned the first space that we created, the first app house that we created. We have the space and we have a check, a budget. So we gave it to the design team, and they were able to go to, secure the highest state-of-the-art technology. But they also went to IKEA, and they went also to recycling places to create that space. We may not have that conditions in our organization, but let me give you an example that is actually closer to the work that I have done in the past with my team. A person in my team was very passionate about personas, but personas were seen as a kind of an ancillary aspect of a project, not a core aspect of a project. So basically what we did together was creating the conditions for her to have a project focused on developing personas and a persona library for the particular product suites that we were developing at the time. And then she was able to invest the time, create the research, interview the people, and generate the information that now is being used, or at the time was being used by multiple project teams. And we only did that because she was empowered, and we created the conditions and the budget and the space for her to do that. And I think the last aspect I want to mention in this particular module is really about empathy. And designers, we are a very specific, or a very particular breed. We argue that we are the champions of empathy, but when you look at social media, the Twitter discussions, the controversies, or our own behavior inside our organizations, we argue that, but we forget to be empathetic with other designers or empathetic with the people that we work with. And the only way that we are going to be successful is if we work together and we work inclusively with the people that we have to collaborate with. So to wrap up the module of design influence, we have to create strong partnerships. We have to create diverse teams, and we have to make sure that we do that in an empathetic manner. About design strategy, one of the key aspects of our work as designers is actually to ensure that the organization has a shared meaning and understanding and alignment of what design means to the organization. For all the teams that we have worked with, it is very important to make sure that we create that definition not from a design or designers or design leaders telling what they're to the organization what design means to the organization, but actually collectively we come up with that definition of shared value and perspective to the work. When I started my career, I was a promoter of the concept that I called, we have as our responsibility as designers is actually to increase the design IQ of the organization. That could be true, but it is also a less empathetic and probably a more a standoffish way of promoting the way that organizations can understand the value of design. So basically, in the second half of my career, especially when I have led larger teams, I am convinced that one of the most important ways to help organizations understand the value of design is for our designers and our design team to actually increase our understanding of business and the business value and what is important for the business organization. And also to create the conditions for our designers to understand the medium in which we design, the technology that we design. So basically, is really we are helping our organizations increase their design IQ when we as designers and a design team increase our business and technology IQ. And actually, we have to wake up. We have to really understand the fact that it is not just about design. Design is not the center of the universe. We are just a planet, or sometimes a protoplanet. We may be Pluto in the ecosystem of the organization. So we want to make sure that we understand how we are a part of that ecosystem, and we are an important component of that. But we're not just the center of the universe. As our design teams grow, we have to understand how we move people, or we have work in different levels on the spectrum. And the majority of our work is going to be at the surface and the structure level, you know, the visual design, the wireframes, the user research study, the design system. But we also have to have people in our teams who are actually involved in creating the conditions for contributing or actually helping the organization define the strategy and create the vision around the work that we are doing. We also have to have the right conditions for people to progress in their career. You know, do we force people to choose between management tracks so they can progress in their career, or an individual contributor track where they can move forward? A very quick story. When I was leading a global design team, I have a person who was a high potential, very high impact individual contributor. But this person didn't have absolutely any interest in going towards the management track. So we together basically created the conditions for her to become the global trainer for the design system and the design tools. So she had to travel around the world, and she was interacting with people, but she was influencing people, but she didn't have to do any of the HR or people management perspective. She was responsible for a book of work that had a high impact. And last but not least, I think it's very important for us to understand what is the recognition language that the people in our team understand. And some people will react very well with thank you, whether it's public or private, or reward, whether it's money and title. But that gets you so far. If we're not speaking the recognition language that our team understands, we may be setting ourselves to lose potential or good people in our team. So, for example, I talk about empowerment and autonomy with the work that we could set our team to do, whether it's the persona project or the furnishing idea of the innovation space. But some people actually need time from you. So one of the things that I have done over the last several years in my career is actually ensure that I dedicate one-on-one times for my team and people in my organization, but also invest the time with the one-on-ones with the partners in either in the other areas of the design leadership team or the organization, and do that in a frequency that enables me to understand what are the needs and what are the pain points that these business leaders or strategic partners have, so we can actually adjust our approach from a design perspective to help them. And that is just a couple of examples of how we can show them that we value them as partners, or show our team that we value, and we create the level of recognition of the time that we have for them. So business embraces design when we have a clear design strategy. We have a common understanding of design. We drive our perspective from all the dimensions that we have to do, both from outside of the design team as well as inside the design team, and create the conditions for our team to thrive. And last but not least, I'm going to talk about design value. In many situations, we sometimes stop asking questions, stop learning, stop being curious. And we as designers, whether we're practitioners or design leaders, we have to continuously ask questions, and ask a lot of questions. And sometimes those questions may be perceived as simple, or things that we should know, but we should not feel discouraged to ask questions. Connecting our work with the design leadership work and the research that McKinsey has been doing, we have to understand what are the key metrics that we have to promote. And in a research project that I did when I was doing some management consulting work, I actually interviewed about 30 designers in a particular team. And I asked them, how do you define success in your project? Many times the answer was, we don't know. We haven't had the time to ask the questions as to what determines success in our projects. When I asked them, do you have any data? Some designers would answer, or some product teams actually answered, we don't have any data. We don't know where to start. And others said, we have so much data that we don't know what to do with it, and we don't know how to start analyzing and working with the data. So it is very important that we create encourage our teams in the digital and design area to understand what determines success from a product team perspective. A short story. I actually had a great relationship with a global CIO, and he called me once and said, Jose, we have a problem. We have this partnership with a very important institution, and they have threatened us, or actually they have told us that they're going to cancel the partnership. What can you do? So I basically assembled a team where I had a designer and a researcher, and in a span of 6 weeks, they built a replica of the live system. We brought together the product managers from both organizations into the lab, and we put them in front of customers using the real system. What they actually realized is that it wasn't our fault or their fault. It was our combined, both organizations and both product managers understood that they had to prioritize key aspects of the experience that were broken, and it had to do in collaboration. The bottom line of this story is actually we renewed the partnership for a multi-year agreement. And our global CIO actually, when he was talking to other CIOs, he would show this slide and said, you want me to define what is the return on investment of design in my organization? This is one example, and we have plenty more to share, but that was one key. At the same time that we recruit people like the global CIO to promote our success, we as designers and design leaders, we have to continuously promote that success. And we have to do it in a manner that we create the conditions for the organization to understand what is it we're doing, or what is it we did, what is it we're doing, and what is it we're going to do next, and understand where we were successful, where we failed, and what we learned from those situations, so we can actually replicate it. And as designers, we have to be very conscious of the fact that the focus of our work has consequences. Many times we have non-inclusive design teams that do not take into account the worst case scenario of adoption of our products and how it may be used in situations where we didn't envision, either a stocking situation or promoting dark patterns of adoption, or promoting fraud. And that might have not, I am sure that's not the intentional way in which we created a particular product, but we have to be conscious of those unintended consequences or unintended scenarios that we have. And last but not least, we have to do the work in an ethical framework. If we don't do it with the parameters of the why and the how, or more the parameters of the why we're doing something rather than the how we can make it happen, but understanding the why we're doing something is super critical. So as I mentioned, we have to create the conditions for business to embrace design by developing our design influence, our design strategy, and our design value. And I want to close with this reflection for you. We have to understand how we create the conditions for us to learn, adapt, and evolve as design leaders and design practitioners, so we can actually create the right conditions in our organization for design to be embraced by the business. Thank you so much.
Awesome presentation, Jose. Thank you so much. I'm gonna start with the questions. I have several questions here. I don't know if we will have the time to answer them all, but at least we can move forward. So at the beginning, it caught my attention that you were talking about that sometimes we ask for a profile, and actually it's not the profile we actually need. So what are the weaknesses of this process on defining really well who is the right people, who do we need, and what's the profile? Is it like a problem from the HR team? Is it a problem of the design team that do not know what kind of professional they need? So how can we identify these weaknesses, and how can we actually find out who is the right person we need?
That is a perennial problem that we have, and especially if you're a recruiter, you have to understand what is the profile that you're looking for, and if you're a hiring manager, you have to understand what the profile you are needing in your team. One of the key aspects and strategies that I have applied throughout my career is determining whether we need a specialist profile. So, for example, somebody who's very deep in user research or design strategy or service design, or do we need more like what Jared Spool calls the broken comm or the generalist profile, somebody who has understanding of visual design, product design, and maybe a little bit of research? Is that the generalist profile that we're looking for? So we look for maybe more elusive candidates that might not have that specialization, or is it that we need deeper knowledge in a particular dimension of that design spectrum? And I think, as I mentioned during my presentation, we're making it more difficult for business partners to do business with us the more specialized and the more different disciplines we involve in our design teams. So we have to make it easier for them to understand how they can engage with us. And also we have to make sure that we make it very clear, in particular when we're not doing the recruiting, we're working with recruiting partners, whether they're internal or external organizations like The Bridge. And we have to make sure that they understand what is it we're looking for, so they can be as effective and impactful in terms of identifying the right talent that we need to recruit for in our organizations. And hopefully that'll help us alleviate some of the pain points. We're very quick as designers and human beings in pointing the finger. Is the recruiter fault? They didn't get out the
Yes.
right talent. But maybe it is also part of our fault because we haven't done our due diligence, our homework in terms of helping the partners that we engage with, in this case, the search partners, to understand what is the profile that we need to recruit. And that's why we have to make sure we define basically the generalist profile with a little bit of more than one dimension in terms of the design spectrum, or the specialist profile with a very deep understanding of a particular area, because maybe that is what our project or program needs at that particular time.
Yeah, I think that's key. So it's like a work that two departments have to do together in order to find the right person, because you can work with a partner like us to find this person, but if the company does not know really what kind of professional they need, it's really hard to find this specific person, even if when you look overseas. So then, and there is another question. It's more related to, and it really caught my attention, that as companies, we're always looking to deliver value. So you mentioned that sometimes we do like a massive project, we invest a lot of money, and we never took the chance to actually talk to the customers, to the users. So when is actually the right moment to talk to them? Do we need to have several touch points? Because sometimes we can ask them, but it's not really important maybe in that moment of the process to listen to them, because it's a decision we can take within the company. So when is the right moment to listen to the customers to actually deliver the most value possible?
I think I'm going to take this question in two dimensions. One is the value and the other one is the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the customer, many organizations collect data from the customer. So in theory, they're listening to the customer. But the key factor is, are we equipped and prepared, and do we have the processes and the investment in place to actually identify actionable feedback as we learn from the customers?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, many organizations listen or act as if they are listening to the customer, but they are not prepared to act on what they learn from the customer. So that is one key aspect. The other aspect is when. Well, if you're not doing it right now, now is the time to start. And we should always have a constant feedback loop with our customers. If we do not have that, we follow the risk of designing, as I mentioned, without considering that outlier case, maybe the negative scenario of use of our product. If we don't bring people who are not like us, who have maybe different diverse backgrounds, perspectives than ours, to understand that might be a potential case of use. And then talking about value, I think many design leaders or many organizations see value when you are contributing to the strategy. But I would argue, and I am a promoter of this idea, you might be working on a tactical or a producer level task if you're an individual contributor. And the fact that you're working on tactical level work does not mean that level of work doesn't have value. So we have to balance between the tactical work that it is absolutely critical to our organizations with the strategic work that we do, which obviously has a different level of value, but both of them combined are critical to demonstrate what the value of design is to the organization.
Awesome. Also, there is another point. You were talking about metrics, and I would like to combine this topic of having the chance to measure the impact with the teams, because all the talks I've heard since we opened the summit are really focused on teams, on people, because people are the ones who actually make things happen, right? So it's important to have metrics. I believe like for some teams it's harder sometimes to set the metrics and turn them into numbers. So how can we start on a strategy in these difficult areas or departments where it's really hard to identify the metrics? How can we start, and how can we measure the impact of having a diverse and inclusive culture in as part of these key metrics? Because we were talking about disruptive innovations, and what would be the difference if we want to measure or we want to set some metrics of having a diverse or inclusive team when not having it?
Yeah, I'm going to. You're absolutely right. I focused on external metrics during my talk, but I think a very important one, and it applies both for external and internal. But one thing that I have done over the last several years is done annual research on the designer sentiment. What is the sentiment of the people in the design team, especially when you have organizations north of 50, 60, 100, 200 people? Do they feel engaged? Do they feel recognized? Do they feel they have career progression? Do they feel that they understand what the professional development opportunities are? Are we providing and creating those professional opportunities? So I think it's very important for us to determine how can we measure, for example, the designer sentiment, and then inform a book of work that will determine, okay, key for us this year, for example, could be professional development. How do we create the conditions for professional development in our team, especially in a COVID environment when we are fully distributed, when we're not going to conference or events, but we actually have the benefit of these type of virtual events, some of them free, some of them for a fee. How can we promote the right level of engagement in our team to do that? And then about the metrics of projects or programs, I think it is very important for us to ask the question of the product owner, for example. How do we determine success? And the success cannot be determined by we release the feature, because that's a vanity metric. Okay, I released 100
Yes.
features this year. Or from the design team, I conducted 100 usability interviews on this project. What did we do with them? What was the value? What kind of change did we influence in the product direction? If we release the feature, are the features being used? Are they being adopted? Is the adoption level or the metrics around product use or conversions, new sign-ups, are they producing actually the revenue that we're looking for? So we have to focus on the measures of health of our team, as well as the metrics and health of the product. And about diversity and inclusion, I think are we as an organization creating the conditions to hire and promote and pay equitable people from diverse backgrounds, education, gender, orientation? Or are we creating the conditions to only hire people like us and only promote people like us? So we have to have kind of a broad lens so we can actually promote and reward the right level of behaviors as we promote a diverse and inclusive workforce and team within our organizations.
And I think that's really important, like providing the conditions, especially now where like there are no borders anymore. You can hire people. It's not a problem, not even paying someone in another country or another continent. So it's something to take into account, especially in this battle for talent. Everyone is looking for the best of the best and the one that fits perfectly the culture. I have one last question that it's here, so we can be sharp with the time. And it's a thought that I've heard in previous talks related to design as well. It is if its design is only a concern of the design team, or we should encourage a design mindset in the other departments, in the other teams.
Yeah, I think this is very closely connected with my statement around raising the design IQ of the organization or raising the business and technology IQ of the design team. I think when we talk about, for example, the design process or the research process, we are alienating our partners. But if we focus on the customer or the client impact that we are together pursuing, then all of a sudden we remove the barrier of the language of design or research or service design, for example, and we're now talking together about what the objective is with the customer. And then we can invite them to actually join us in the journey. Come on, let's talk together to this customer. Let's do this research work together, or let's do this co-design session together. But we are doing it in the service of the client and the customer that we're trying to service. And that, I think, is going to help us. And as I mentioned, I don't want to undermine the importance of understanding the medium that we're working on. It's not for us to become technologists, but understanding the technology medium, whether it's artificial intelligence, machine learning, or code in a mobile app or something like that, just so we can have a better informed conversation with the technologies who are actually helping us implement the features that we're designing, the products that we're designing into that environment. So I think it's a complement of the three dimensions. Making sure that we invite people to the conversation in design by focusing on the customer, making sure that we create the conditions for our team to understand what are the business priorities and prerogatives, and understanding what is the medium that we're working on, so we can have a more impactful conversation with the people in our organizations.
Okay, excellent. That was very, very insightful. So thank you so much. I'm going to finish with the questions so we can be sharp with the time, as I said before. I would like to finish asking you if there is a last advice you would like to give to all the design leaders or to the talents who are like building a career in this field. And also, I know that you're a person that gives a lot of, you're an active speaker, that you develop a lot of research, that you're actually building content. So if you can share with us, where can all the audience follow your work? Is it on LinkedIn, or maybe you have another site so they can follow and keep updated?
Well, I'm going to start with the easy part, which is the last one. You can find me in Twitter, LinkedIn, and Medium as kind of my three main platforms for sharing work. About kind of a parting gift or a parting piece of advice. The last 18 months, 14 months have been very tough on everybody, but they have shown us something. If companies were resisting a move towards digitalization and collaboration in the digital world, they have accelerated that path by many, many years. Things that took years to implement, they took weeks or days or short months to make it happen. And the only way that happens now is for all of us, whether we're digital practitioners, technologists, or designers, is to always be learning what is out there, what is happening around us, not just in our organization or in our projects, but what is happening around us. Be curious, always be learning. When you see people that are always asking questions, always wanting to learn what is happening in the digital world, what is happening in terms of collaboration technology or in machine learning or in artificial intelligence, I can tell you, young designers that are coming out right now, right out of school, they're probably more experts than I am in AI and machine learning, because that's the world that they have been brought up in. So for us to surround ourselves with people who are smarter than us in certain aspects of the work that we have to do, and for us to always be curious and continue learning, it doesn't matter what stage we're in our career, is going to bring us the opportunities that we so desire to get and find in the current conditions.
Amazing. I think we all should keep learning. It's a never-ending journey, and things change so fast that if we miss one day of studies or learning from everything we have available nowadays, it's gonna make a lot of impact in our professional development. So thank you so much, Jose. It was such a pleasure to hear you talking about business embracing design. We're gonna share your social media with all the audience so they can follow and keep track on your work. And I hope we have the chance to have you in another event also sharing some of your studies.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate
Have a
it. And
nice
thank you for the
afternoon.
audience for being with us today.
Thank you, everyone. See you in the next talk later.